Posture is key in Pilates, and that's exactly why a lot of people come to us. They want to improve their posture, or they may have an injury or an imbalance going on in their body, and they want to utilize Pilates to help correct that. So it's very important that we take some time today and learn about the different posture types, what goes on with them, and how we can correct them. So just starting first, what is good posture, right? Ideally, we want to be in a nice long line, but we're still connecting and accepting with the natural curves of the spine. So what that looks like a lot of the time will be when you're standing up tall or even seated, that you'll have a nice line down the body that connects your ears, shoulders, hip, maybe the knees and heels if you're standing as well too. If you were to look at the side, someone would be a nice long line, but still have those natural curves of the spine, of the back here. It becomes an issue once we start having poor posture, right? So poor posture, you've probably seen it everywhere. It may look like that rounded lady at the grocery store over her grocery shopping cart. It may look like the person that's the gymnast, right? Poking out their butt everywhere and sticking it out as they go. We see a lot of funky postures and probably a lot of weird movement imbalances happening in our everyday lives, or people even struggling to walk down the street, things like that. You can go to the airport or mall and see a whole array of different bodies, shapes, and sizes. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them. It just means in Pilates, we need to especially retrain them how to connect with their breath and their core. Once they're able to do this, their body is able to come to more of a place of equanimity or a place of inner balance and a lot better posture than they typically might be living in on a day-to-day basis. Hey, Dash. Sorry about that. So we're going to take a deep dive into it today. In Pilates, we train a lot in what's called neutral spine. So what neutral spine means is that we are doing and working with that regular standing posture. A lot of the time, if you're laying down on the reformer or Cadillac or mat, your tailbone will be heavy on the mat. Only when your legs are lifted or elevated up on your back is when you will especially need to imprint or flatten your spine as best you can to help protect your low back and your vertebra. So just know that to begin with. But coming back to utilizing that posture then, when people are naturally standing up, tendency is you're going to see three different types of posture. So the first one we're going to discuss, I'm going to stand up for a minute so you can kind of see from the side a little bit, but is lordotic. So with that, the booty is going to stick out. The chest is going to be open. It's kind of like that gymnast, right? Kind of standing up, sticking the tail out. And that doesn't mean that everyone with a big butt is lordotic. It's more of the curve or that sway of the seat happening here. So with that anterior pelvic tilt going on, chances are that that person walking around like this has weak glute muscles. They have a tight low back because of the weak glute muscles. They may have weak abdominals as well too. And they may have tight or weak hip flexors. So what that basically means is if their booty here is a little weak, their abs are going to be a little weak, their hips are going to be tight, and their back gets tight as well. And a good way to think about it is if something's tight and weak, what we need to do is we need to strengthen it as well as stretch it. And that's exactly what Pilates is made to do. And the more you just encourage the client to come back to that neutral spine or neutral pelvis, the better off they'll be. And the more you'll get those kind of more dominant muscles that are firing up, such as the hip flexors possibly, to relax, the more they're going to be able to tap into their lesser worked muscles, such as the glutes and seat, to then work in conjunction with the core. A second posture muscle or posture stance that you might see going on is kyphosis. So this especially happens, like we discussed earlier, in the shopping cart lady, right? The very rounded back happening. And this Kyphosis can happen especially either in your thoracic spine or as well in your lumbar spine too, a little bit lower down. It varies person by person, but basically with kyphosis, you're going to see a very tight and kind of collapsed shoulder girdle. So they're very tight here. They'll need to open up as best they can. You might see like a weak upper or maybe mid back. Their spine muscles are also going to be a little bit weaker. Their posture muscles, essentially. So they're going to need a lot more back of the body work, such as chest expansion or things like pulling straps, things of that nature. And sometimes too, they may have very tight upper abdominals as well, very collapsed in the ribs a little bit here. So it may even make it harder to breathe. One more thing they might have is tight hamstrings. So with these people, it may appear at first that their back is tight, but then you get them into something like feet in loops and you notice right away that, oh, it's actually their hamstrings. Their spine can lay down just fine, but their legs are super tight and coming up to a 90 is very much not so fun. So we'll again discuss more in person so you get a greater in-depth of how this works. But those are two types. The last one is a little bit trickier to find in day-to-day life as you're walking around, but it is scoliosis. So this one is more of a curvature that happens in the spine. You may find that it's very slight in some people or very large in others. It can happen anywhere along the spine, the cervical, the thoracic, or the lumbar spine. Sometimes it happens in people when they've gone through a traumatic experience. Sometimes it occurs in childhood, such as maybe things like a car accident or other things that are going on, such as they played sports and they got injured and kind of, that whiplash happened. And this is their spine helping to even that out as best they can, but it grew in a little bit of an angle instead of aligning up the way it should have. This may impair the body's digestive system sometimes. Their hormones might be a little off. They may have things like mood swings. A lot of times, too, they may have excessive pain through their hips, their knees, their legs, because maybe their pelvis is off as well with this curve. You may notice this especially when someone's doing the exercise elephant on the reformer, or even when they're doing a roll up on the mat. You may find they're struggling a lot. This will be very apparent too in people that do rotational sports, especially such as golf or tennis. You may find that just because of the sport itself, someone's developed a little bit of scoliosis along the way because they are have been very dominant on the one side of their body compared to the other. So Pilates is going to work a lot to help balance out both sides of the body, making them a little bit more symmetrical, making them a little bit more even. And it will help with supporting their spine. The more we strengthen up their core muscles, the more it'll alleviate the pressure that they may be feeling along their spine and back because of the curve being slightly off as well. So those are the three different types of posture that you'll typically see out in the world. But again, just working with more of a neutral spine in our clients and getting them stronger in that pelvic placement is super key to helping correct all these. Don't feel like you have to know everything to do right in the get-go. It's up to the client being able to find where balance is, where center is in their body. And for you as an instructor to then realize, okay, I'm noticing my client is very dominant on this right side compared to they're a little weaker on the left. And I'm going to work to balance that out in my programming, right? So I hope this was helpful and I look forward to learning with you more in the days to come.